cloud enthusiasts. Welcome to another session on AWS Cloud and Services. Today, we will be looking at the second phase of our journey into AWS Session Manager. In the previous video, we already talked on how to connect to a EC2 instance in a public subnet. But today, we will be looking at EC2 launched in a private subnet. How do you connect to an EC2 instance that has no public access to the internet? Now, why do we need this? In real world, we have seen situations where companies are trying to keep their applications running in an EC2 instance in a back-end server where no one will be able to get a hold of it. Now, that is where the AWS System Manager as a service comes into play. So, production instances should not have public IPs or internet access for security reasons. SSM allows us to access this EC2 instance in a private subnet. We will disable SSH and inbound ports entirely, and we will avoid the need for a bastion host. We keep all the communication inside our AWS environment, you know, focused on where we want them to be, and the traffic that is allowed to come in are only traffic that are within that AWS environment. So no traffic from outside can interact with this. But how is it possible? How is it that we're able to do this? And the reason we're able to do this is because of we will be using what we call the AWS private link, otherwise called VPC endpoint. Now, these VPC endpoints, as you can see right here on your screen, there are three of them actually that we will need to, configure and set up. And these VPC endpoints will allow or let us, the EC2 instance, to be able to talk to the SSM privately without going through the internet. Now, but before we do this, I want us to first and foremost, create or simulate what a private environment, a private subnet would look like before we can actually go and start creating an EC2 instance in that private subnet. So to do that, I'm going to go and log into my AWS account, which I've already done. And I'm going to go into the VPC services right here. Click that open. And from here, I am going to go to subnets, click subnets, and I'm going to create a new subnet in my default VPC. And I will give that subnet a name, and I will say demo private subnet. Availability zone doesn't matter, don't really care. For the subnet IP, I can use something in this same air region. Let's say it is try 16. I think it's available. 20. Now let's see if we can use this subnet. I'm not going to tag it for now, but for best practices, I always encourage my students to tag all resources that are spawned up in this account. But for this demo purposes, we're just going to move on this way. Oh, this is not available. Let's see what's next. I will try 3148. Let's see. And that is not available. I guess I already have that in my account. Let's create another one. All right. Now that I've created a subnet, a private subnet, I'm going to create a route table, and I'm going to associate the route table to this private subnet. But this route table will have no internet access whatsoever. So click create route table, and then use demo private route table. And it's going to be in my default VPC, and I'm going to click create. Now I am going to associate the private subnet we just created with this route table, and click edit, and it's going to be this one right here. Select that and save. Now, as you can see, we have a private route table that has been associated with our private subnet. And from the route table, you can actually see where it says destination is home locally. So all traffic are internal. So now that we have a private subnet, let's go and now launch our EC2 instance in this private subnet. So I'm going to go back to the EC2 services and click launch. And I will name this EC2 instance private EC2 SSM. And I'm going to use my default private free tier eligible AMI. And for instance type, we'll stick with our free tier T2 micro. Key pair, we're going to proceed without key. We do not need key. And we're going to scroll all the way down to network setting. And this is where we want to make sure our EC2 instance is in the subnet that we've created. So I'm going to click edit in the network setting. And I'm going to look for that private subnet that I created. And it is this one right here, the demo private subnet. Select that and make sure auto assign public IP is disabled. We do not want an IP address associated with our EC2 instance. And scroll all the way down. We do not need this protocol in there. So I'm just going to click remove. Security group is fine. Let's go all the way down. And now under advanced detail, we will be selecting the EC2 instance that we created in the previous class. If you want to see how we created that EC2 instance, the instance role that we attach and use for the public SSM, please watch the previous video. It's going to be somewhere on the top, left or right at the top. Now I'm just going to look for that same one, and it is this one, the EC2 SSM role. Let's just take a look at that role and see what it has, just for those who are a little bit curious. Now you can see this is a role, and you can see the trust relationship says it's for an EC2 services, and the permissions that are attached to it are the Amazon SSM Managed Instance Core and the Amazon SSM Managed EC2 Instance Default Policy. Now, let's move on. Now that we have associated that, we are going to click Launch Instance. Now, there are certain things that we definitely need in this environment for our EC2 instance to work. And like I said, the VPC private link is necessary for this to work. And since everything is going to be internal, we want the services to be able to communicate within themselves using the VPC endpoint. And to do that, we will just go back to our VPC services. I'm going to right click and open this in a new tab. And when you look at the left panel, you will see where it says endpoint right here under the private links and latest. So click endpoint, and we are going to create 3 endpoints. And those 3 endpoints, one is going to be the SSM endpoint. There's going to be an EC2 messaging endpoint and an SSM messaging endpoint. And it's as simple as this. So I'm going to click create endpoint. And then we're going to be creating this endpoint in the same region where we launch our EC2 instance. And if you go back to the EC2 instance, you can see we're in the North Virginia region. That is where we created our EC2 instance right here in the US East 1. So our VPC endpoint needs to be created in that same place. So I'm going to name this first one SSM endpoint. Give it a good name. And we're going to select AWS services, and I'm going to click SSM right here. And it would be the .com Amazon AWS.US East 1. This is the first one we need. I'm going to select that and tick the box. It's going to be an interface type, not a gateway. So which means we will be charged hourly for that. I'm going to associate it with the default VPC that we have our EC2 instance running in, and leave everything default as it is. For the subnets, we want to pick the same subnet region that we have that EC2 instance running in. And I would go back, since we looked at it, it's in the US East 1. Let me go and look for US East one. That's it right here. So select that VPC, which is this one, the demo private subnet. Select that, and I will move down and select any security group. It's fine. At this point, I'm just going to look for the same security group that our EC2 instance is using right now and select that same EC2. So it's the Launch Wizard one. I'm going to go back to my VPC services and select the same Launch Wizard one. Scroll all the way down and create this endpoint. Now that is one endpoint created. We need two more endpoints. So the next one, create endpoint. Same thing. This one is be SSM messages endpoint. SSM messages endpoint. And it's going to be an AWS service as well. And I'm going to search for SSM messages. And as you can see, this is the one you want. The .com, Amazon, AWS.US, .east, -1, .ssm messages. Select that, tick the box, scroll down, select our default VPC, scroll down again, put everything in your same region, same subnet, private, scroll down, and select the same security group. Like you can select two if you want, completely up to you. There's no limit to just selecting just one. So I'm gonna leave that as it is and scroll down and click endpoint. Great. Now we see we have two endpoints at the moment. The other one is still coming up. Now let's create the last one. Now this last one is going to be for EC2 messages. And it's going to be an AWS services as well. You scroll down and search for EC2 messages, EC2 messages right here, this one. Select that, tick the box, scroll down, select the same VPC, the default VPC. We're going to select the same subnets as well as a security group. With that, click create endpoint. Now the endpoint takes a while for them to be ready. So while the endpoints are getting ready, we will go back and try to see if our EC2 instance is up and ready for us to proceed. Oh yes, before we move forward, I wanted to make sure that for this particular endpoint, the SSM endpoint, we want to make sure each security group actually has the HTTPS protocol in it. Now, this does not mean that we are allowing traffic into our EC2 environment. Remember, the route table has no internet gateway, but for the SSM, manager to work in a private subnet, it actually needs that HTTPS protocol enabled. So for this particular subnet, the SSM endpoint, the one with the SSM .com Amazon.us is 1-1 SSM, please make sure the security group has HTTP protocol in it. So I'm going to open this security group in a new tab and edit to security group rules to allow inbound rule for HTTPS. That's all we will need to do. HTTPS, and we're just going to say anywhere, doesn't really matter. Save it. It's still blocked anyways. There are no traffic coming into that private subnet where that EC2 instance is launched. Now that we have completed the creation of the VPC endpoint, and we've also created the security group with the HTTPS protocol in it, let's now attempt to SSM into that EC2 instance. So I'm going to go back to my EC2 instance. It should definitely be ready right now. Status check shows 2 check pass. Cool. Now let's try to connect this with SSM. As you can see, it is still cooking. So we're going to give it some time because this usually takes a while for it to actually get the EC2 instance ready. And it's because since we just enabled the HTTPS, this will take a little while. I'm going to pause the video a little bit for some time until it is ready because I don't want this video to be too long. And when it's ready, we will come back and SSM into it. Thank you. Yeah, this took roughly 3 minutes. And so let's check and see where we are right now. And yes, we are able to connect to our private EC2 instance in a private subnet with no internet connectivity. Now, this EC2 instance, you can see it actually has no public IP in there, which means it is actually a backend server. So I can try and see if I can connect to it. Click connect and connect here, and let's see what happens if we're able to have a session SSM session uh, in here. And looks like we do. There we go. And guys, this is how you can connect to your EC2 instance in a private subnet using the session manager. We've just securely connected to an EC2 instance, observing the rules that were set up in place where only users uh, within the environment, the AWS environment, using the system manager and the AWS private link can actually connect to an EC2 instance in a private subnet. Now, this is how the whole architecture actually looks like. And like I said, by using SSM and VPC endpoints, all traffic stays within that AWS private network, making this approach ideal for production environment where security is a priority. No bastion host, no SSH, no key, pure cloud native access. And with that, we're rounding up this particular session on SSM, and I look forward to seeing you guys in the next video. Thank you and have a